TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D. Wood. If you don't know who I am, I don't want to do this every time, but I can't help myself. Hey, Sheikh Yassir Eric, tell him who I am.
As for David Wood, I have rarely come across somebody who is more vulgar, vile, foul-mouthed, noxious, repugnant, depraved excuse of a preacher. Whatever he is, David Wood, it is obvious to any person of faith, is not a man of God. He's a vulgar, obscene, evil jerk.
That dude doesn't know the half of it.
That guy talks about being foul-mouthed and being a jerk. That's very interesting.
And with me, I've got the Apostate Prophet. Tell him who you are,
Who?
AP.
I am the Apostate Prophet.
Jeremy Wong said, who made the stream late this time? That was me this time. It's usually AP.
Yeah.
It was me this time.
Yeah.
He actually had to message me a few minutes ago, said, where's the link?
Yeah.
Anyway. So,
Yeah.
In your face. All right. So we are going to be checking out a testimony video. Then we're going to be checking out a Muslim response to the testimony video. What? Yes, that's right. We do our own investigations. This one is from an ex-Muslim from Sudan, Yassir Eric. And he had his video on One for Israel. So we watched a video a couple weeks ago from One for Israel. And this is let's see here. So this is another testimony of a former, what we would call radical Muslim who became a Christian. It's been posted there. And we're going to take a look at it and watch AP convert after he hears this testimony. And let's see, David, what is the best way to minister to Muslims? They are usually hostile, so I don't know how, to be honest. I mean, no, it's going to depend on the Muslim. Some will be hostile, some won't. But yeah, a lot of it will depend on, finding out what kind of person you're talking to and so on. But I've actually got a video on there, which I deleted when I deleted most of the stuff from my old channel before I gave it away. But there's a video called, you can look it up, how to, let me see what it's called real quick before, just since you asked. How to share. It's how to share. It's on archive channels. So check out how to share unpleasant facts with pleasant Muslims. So this is not about how to be in your face. This is how to have a discussion with someone who may or may not be a little aggressive. And ordinarily you would not want to get into some sort of shouting match. There are occasions where you want to dial things up, but if you're just having a conversation with some Muslim that you know from school or from work or someone you meet somewhere, you generally don't want to dial things up until it's necessary.
Yeah.
What are you looking at? What are you doing? What are you grinning at and dancing to?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
dancing. I'm listening to the Quran and dancing.
Let's jump into this video.
Let us.
Zechariah, he was a nice person. He was a decent person. He was very smart. He was the only Christian in the whole of the school. And I hated him. Because I thought as a Muslim, I must be better than him. But he was better than I. We start to beat him every single day that we come to school. And we agreed on that night, we need to kill him. It was dark. It was cold. And we went ahead of him. And
just one quick question. Why are you laughing when he's talking about beating up a Christian?
It's hilarious. No, I was actually laughing at something in the chat.
But, okay. I thought you were like, ha ha ha, yeah, beat up the Christian. That brings back memories. It brings back memories of Turkey when we used to go around beating up Christians.
Yeah. No, I'm laughing at Black Angel here in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Continue.
All right. So everyone, just to be clear, AP giggling himself silly when someone talks about beating up a Christian.
5 of us, we climbed a tree and we waited there. And from far away, we saw that a torch coming. And the light became bigger and bigger. as it approaches us. And the minute that he just went under the tree, we jumped at him. He was crying, he was screaming, he was shouting. We broke his arm, we broke his leg. He started to bleed. And because he started to scream and begging for help, I put my hand in his mouth so that...
What are you grinning at? Talking
Just
about
continue,
beating this
man.
guy, breaking his arm, breaking his legs,
Just
covering up
continue.
his mouth. Just continue. I'm sitting here. He's talking about beating this Christian to death, and you're going.
I don't understand how we got into this. It's kind of it came out of nowhere. It's like dramatic music, dark dramatic music. He's
Yeah, it is
talking
weird. They
about
they
beating
like
up
start
kids.
they
Like,
like
what is
started with
happening?
this. They like
What is
started with
happening?
this. Yeah, they didn't lead up to this. They just started with this story of Zechariah. So the video just literally starts with Zechariah was a nice guy. He was a Christian. He's the only Christian in our school. So we used to beat him up every day, and then we decided we're going to beat him to death.
I know that's like the video starts. Anyway, one day we were beating up this guy. We wanted to kill him. Like that's how it started. It's kind of shocking. I don't know.
Here we have from Brigham Young, peace be upon him. My favorite duo, Subhuman Abu Daoud and the Apostate Prophet. Love you guys.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
All right, back to this video that keeps cracking up AP because it's about horribly abusing a Christian.
No noise will come out of it. It's similar when you are slaughtering a sheep, it's just...
Dang, he's talking about covering up the mouth of the Christian, saying it's like slaughtering a sheep. Hang on. So I put my hand in his mouth.
Put my hand in his mouth so that no noise will come out of it. It's similar when you are slaughtering a sheep, it's just shivering, and the others were beating him.
You ever slaughtered a sheep, AP?
Nope. I did slaughter a rabbit though.
It's pretty sick.
I ate it.
One day, when you and I were on that farm and they had all those sheep, I said, "Hey, if you want to slaughter one, I'll do it for you." It's messed up.
I felt very proud. You were actually doing something for Allah. You want to please Him. And suddenly, he could no longer breathe, and we could not hear his voice. We left him in the wood between life and death.
Is this when you want to crack up laughing, AP?
No, this is where it's getting kind of serious. What in the world is happening?
It's been serious the entire time you were cracking up.
I wasn't prepared for it, man. Like,
Oh, okay. Okay.
it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, next time I'll be like, AP, time to be serious here because it's about to be about to get real here.
This is why I like watching, like, when you watch stuff on Netflix, it says like gore, violence, this and that, and I'm like, okay, I know what's coming. It would be good if that was the case here as well.
Yeah, it's good because like if you didn't have that Netflix warning, you'd be watching the gore and cracking up laughing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
We went back, you wash yourself, and you pray. And Zechariah never came back. Never
That was
seen
a cool
him.
effect. They showed the empty chair.
I was born and raised up in a very, very fanatic Muslim family. When I was a child, my father brought me to a Quran school. I was only 8 years old, and my father just dropped me there. They shaved my head. We sat in a circle. The shaykh sat in the middle of the circle, and he has a very long whip. I was...
Hey, did you ever?
Wait, how old was he when this was happening? He was 8 years.
I think no. With the beating, the guy they're putting the stuff out of order. They arranged it for
Okay.
some people do that. They put the most dramatic thing up front
Okay.
so people don't tune out. But yeah, that's that was later in high school. But yeah, now they're going back to when he was 8 years old. Yeah, I had to say I was confused when I first saw it too because you talk about beating this Christian to death, and they says I was 8 years old. Like, wait, what? That's hardcore, man. So you're like 6? You're like 6 beating this kid?
The thing is, what made me pause and what made me a little bit question, wait a minute, is this real? For a second, did he just lengthily, explained basically that he killed somebody, right? Or that he, together with others, killed somebody?
Wait for the story. You gotta let it finish, man.
Okay.
and stop interrupting. Did you ever get sent to any sort of Quran school at any point?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nabil. He didn't like these guys. These guys are sent to madrasas and stuff like that. But Nabil said he would get sent to Quran camp. So he would have all these. He would have all these passages. He knew all the short. He could quote the short surahs of the Quran in Arabic, and he would say, "Yeah, they had us memorize these things in Quran camp when I was a kid." Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Quran camp. So he says he was forced to memorize the Quran, and I think he said he get beat.
They shaved my head. We sat in a circle. The Shaykh sat in the middle of this circle, and he has a very long whip. I was forced to memorize the Quran.
To be fair, lots of people outside the West beat kids when they're making them learn stuff. Before I put my kids in MMA, I put them in karate first, and but they had their sensei was from Romania, and he would say to the kids, it's funny. He goes, "Back where I learned, the guy walk around, he has a big stick. You mess up, you don't do your kick right, he hits you with a stick, and that make you do it right." He goes, "But I come to the U.S., I start teaching, I find out they call this abuse here. I can't do it. I can't even teach you like you need to be taught. But okay, go ahead. All right." So he's actually complaining that he can't whack him with a stick because that's the best way to learn. Anyway, so yes, you can make people memorize the Quran. I mean, think about this. It's like beating them to memorize the Quran, and then they brag about, "Oh, look how many of these kids memorize the Quran. It's so powerful."
It is actually, this is very common around the Muslim world. Lots of Muslims will, or ex-Muslims will tell you stories of how they were treated when they were sent to these schools, whether it be just schools that you go to on a weekly basis, or camps, places where you stay over the summer and things like that. Teachers often treat the kids very, very poorly and force them by beating them and abusing them otherwise to learn to read the Quran or to memorize the Quran. I never went to such a place. I went to a place regularly on the weekends when I was a kid, and there the worst thing we would get was to get some bad words from the teacher, and that's it. And I was a good learner, so I didn't have much of a problem. But I know lots of people.
You hear how AP always has to work in a compliment about himself. Of course,
Yeah,
I was the prize pupil.
Yeah, I was always the best, and no.
All right. Let's see. Forced to memorize the Quran. That's what's funny. Like if you rounded up kids and convinced parents to send them to a school where you get beat until you memorize books by Dr. Seuss, all of a sudden you'd have millions of kids who know the works of Dr. Seuss and so on. It would be a miracle.
Yeah,
powerful.
It would be every mistake that you do, this whip will just come right in the middle of your head. You're not allowed to cry.
Oh, I like that.
Because in our culture, they tell you men never cry.
Yeah, I should be there.
I was crying every single night. And they told me, you belong to the Islamic Ummah. And that's why you fight for it. You stay loyal to it. I started to hate people. To hate everybody who's not a Muslim.
But why?
And I especially used to hate the Jews. So I was preparing myself to go and fight for Allah in the jihad. But every night I went to bed, and when we put the light off, I did not know what will happen with me if I die.
I want to say some. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was going to say something about what he just said.
Yeah, so I tell people quite often when I talk about being an ex-Muslim and growing up as a Muslim, growing up with hate, with intolerance, with very strange thoughts about other people, and some people might think it's an exaggeration, especially people who are not familiar with the culture, but it's really, it is really a fact. I mean, I remember myself. I grew up in a religious family. We would go to gatherings on weekends and on other days, and I would I would get a lot of information, a lot of really messed up stuff, and I remember being in, I don't know, first grade or second grade or something like that, and just talking to my little friend, like these dumb little kids, and talking to him about how in the very near future things might go very bad, and the end might come, and we will kill the Jews and stuff like that, and the Dajjal will come, and we will fight the disbelievers. And I'm a little kid in Germany, you know, just going to school, learning to talk, and and that is the kind of stuff that I learned, and that is internalized. And imagine how that shapes your view of the world as you grow up, basically thinking that it is eternally determined that all of these other people who are not Muslims are basically the enemies, and you are supposed to deal with them violently. It's really it's crazy.
Seems like something that could have an impact on you at some point.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, hey, here's a question of all questions. Who do you think is worse, internet Muslims or atheists? Oh. That one's close.
No, I mean, I would say, I said a lot of stuff about new atheists or online atheists, and the thing I can think of often is cliche and cringe, often,
Mhm.
and a little bit annoying, but that's all I can say, and sometimes a little bit pretentious and all of that, and West centered, but I don't think they compare in any way to the online Muslims.
Yeah, I would say if you get like a hardcore atheist troll and a hardcore, keyboard jihadi, they can be equally annoying. The difference is one of them will also simultaneously want to kill you.
Yes.
So that's kind of, and, be talking about what he's going to do to your wife and mom and everything else as soon as he gets his Islamic State and so on. So, yeah, I consider that a pretty significant difference there. I did what I wanted to comment on what he just said was he was talking about every night he would go to bed and wouldn't know what's going to happen to him. A lot of people don't know that in Islam, there is no what Christians call assurance of salvation, meaning
Yeah.
like that you know what's going to happen to you. And part of this is Muhammad himself, according to the Quran, didn't know what was going to happen to him. So let's go ahead and check out.
I was scared all my
Quran.
life that I will probably burn in hell before, even if I die as a Muslim. So
Yeah, let's I'll just pick a translation here. So Surah 46 verses 8 to 9. Or do they say he has forged it? Say, had I forged it, then can ye obtain no single blessing for me from God? He knows the best of that whereof you talk, so glibly enough is he for a witness between me and you, and he is oft forgiving, most merciful. So he's being accused of fabricating things. And then the next verse, we'll look at a couple translations. Say, I am no bringer of newfangled doctrine among the apostles, nor do I know what will be done with me or with you. I follow but that which is revealed to me by inspiration. I am but a warner, open and clear. So let's look at that little part. So Pickthall, nor know I what will be done with me or with you. Then we have Yusuf Ali, which we read, and then Hilali Khan, nor do I know what will be done with me or with you. Shakir, I do not follow. Let's see. And I do not know what will be done with me or with you. Now, why is this relevant? Well, the context here, the context of where this is used, we have here. So this is Sahih al-Bukhari. This is Sahih al-Bukhari, and the number is, what's the number? 3929, if you want to look this up in sunnah.com. But check it out. So an Ansari woman who gave the pledge of allegiance, not to the flag, but to the Prophet, that the Ansar drew lots concerning the dwelling of the immigrants. Uthman, this is not the Caliph Uthman, this is a different Uthman, was decided to dwell with them. Uthman fell ill, and I nursed him till he died, and we covered him with his clothes. Then the prophet came to us, and I, addressing the dead body, said, may Allah's mercy be on you. I bear witness that Allah has honored you. So I bear witness that Allah has honored you. So he's going to paradise. Uthman's going to paradise. So great Muslim died, and woman says, hey, Allah has honored you. On that, the prophet said, how do you know that Allah has honored him? I replied, I do not know. May my father and my mother be sacrificed for you, O Allah's messenger. But who else is worthy of it if not Uthman? In other words, if I can't say that this super great, super awesome, super devout, super pious Muslim isn't being honored by Allah, I mean, if I can't say that he's being honored by Allah, then who else can I say it about? So, but who else is worthy of it if not Uthman? He, this is Muhammad, he said, as to him, by Allah, death has overtaken him, and I hope the best for him. By Allah, though I am the apostle of Allah, yet I do not know what Allah will do to me. Now notice, this is talking about being honored with paradise after death, and Muhammad says, I don't even know what's going to happen to me, let alone this guy. So that's why we say no assurance of salvation in Islam. Not even Muhammad, according to the Quran and according to the Hadith, not even Muhammad knew what Allah is going to do with him. So you got all these guys, hey, I'm going to I get virgins and I get this and I get that. Dude, your prophet didn't know. Abu Bakr, and then in addition to that, there's this issue of Allah being a deceiver. And Abu Bakr was one of a handful of people who was guaranteed paradise by Muhammad himself. Muhammad said, yeah, you're getting paradise. The rest of us don't know, but you're getting paradise. And Abu Bakr later said, if I had 1 foot in paradise, I would still fear Allah's deception. In other words, I would still be worried that Allah was tricking me into thinking I'm going to paradise, even using Muhammad to trick me, because according to Muslim sources, Allah does trick even people who follow him. He tricked the followers of Jesus, of course, into believing he died on the cross. Even Muslims in Surah 8, Allah deceived Muslims by giving Muhammad a false dream, convincing them to go out and fight a battle that they would not have fought if they knew who was actually coming. Allah tricked them into thinking it was a small army coming to get them to go out and fight. But that's the kind of God you're dealing with, and that's the sort of impact it has. Anyway, long story short, this guy, he's in Quran school and saying, I have no idea what's going to happen to me if I die. All right, we're ready to get back to this without AP's constant interjections here?
Right. Yes.
My cousin was severely sick, and the doctors, they said he's going to die. They gave him only a couple of days. And when they came 2 people, they were Coptic Christians. And one of them wanted to greet me, and then I saw he had a cross. And then I pulled my hand back. I said, well, I'm not going to touch a hand with a cross. And then he said to me, we hear that this child is sick. We would like to pray for him. And only out of politeness, I told them, okay. And they started to speak to God like a person that he speaks to his friend. They said, God, please heal this child. The minute that they said, Amen, this child opened his eyes for the first time in 4 weeks. He started to move his hands. He started to speak. He sat down in his bed and he started to walk. And one of those 2 persons who prayed sat down with me and he said to me, you know what? The real miracle is that God wants to change your heart. Do you believe that Yeshua is alive? And I told him, yeah. Because according to the Islamic tradition, God took him to heaven and he's alive. And
Hey, that's interesting. If you're talking to Muslims, hey, you believe Jesus is alive. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, because, yeah, I hadn't thought through that because so Muslims believe they can speak directly to Muhammad. They do it in their prayers. They say, peace be upon you, O Prophet. So they believe they can speak directly to Muhammad. And so you ask them what they're doing. Now, if you ask them what they're doing and you point out, hey, that makes it sound like Muhammad is omniscient or something like that, or he's omnipresent. If you believe Muhammad can hear you when you're speaking to him, then he would have to be omnipresent. In other words, he's there, or he's just like omniscient. He just knows somewhere. If he's somewhere else, then he knows when you're talking to him in your prayers. And so the response is no, somehow Allah or angels transmit your blessing to Muhammad so that he's constantly being bombarded with your blessings all day long. But notice, if you believe you can speak to Muhammad and your messages are conveyed to him, that's interesting. Anyway, he was saying, hey, why not talk to Jesus too?
Come back one day. And he said to me, because he's alive, you can speak to him. That changed my entire life. And when I started to read the scripture, nobody needed to convince me to love the Jewish people. The only way for Muslims to start to love the Jews is when they meet Yeshua. I loved my family. I loved my father.
Hey, what did you think about Jews when you were a Muslim? Because you didn't come from one of the we gotta kill all these guys groups.
I just told you. When I was a Muslim, I hated.
No, I know. I know what you heard, but you were hearing this stuff when you were a little kid. But I mean, like you once you're sort of grown up and so on, like.
Okay, that's different. Yeah. I remember when I was a teenager. It's hard to remember exactly how you felt and how you thought back then, but as far as I remember, I had this awkward, weird, sinister feeling when I heard about Jews. When Jews were being talked about. That said, I personally, when I was a teenager, I kind of developed this whole thing, like this interest in different people in other cultures, and started liking them, and especially I began especially liking those that I'm told to see as bad and very different, and all of that. I would get very interested in those people, and Jews were at the front of that. So I didn't. I mean, I kind of let go a little bit of that whole hate, but I still believed underneath all of that we are supposed to fight the Jews when the day comes. And I mean, even the word Jew, like in Turkish Yehudi, which is like the Arabic Yehudi, it kind of had these bad undertones to me, But yeah, I don't know. That's it.
Yeah, Nabil never talked about this later on very much, I don't think. But when he was a Muslim, so he's an Ahmadi. They're about as peaceful as you can get within Islam. But yeah, he would occasionally blurt some stuff out if something came up about Israel in the news or something like that. Or I don't even want to tell. Well, I guess I can tell. So I worked for a moving company, and it was getting to where it was like 105, 106, 107 degrees out there, and I did not deal well with the heat. And my boss was saying, "Hey, we should bring someone along who could deal with the heat." And I go, "I got a friend who's Pakistani, right?" And so this is Nabil. He's still a Muslim. Anyway, we're moving this Jewish family, and he starts going to me. I bet they try to talk the price down. Right? And I was like, "Man, shut up, racist!" Right? Long story short, they actually did try to talk the price down, and and Nabil was going forever. He was like, "You see, I told you." But it's like, gosh, it's like messed up. So,
yeah.
Snide here says, "I was wondering if you would ever expose any other religions, even Christian sects that claim to be Christian, like Mormonism." Probably not. There are other Christians who deal with cults. I personally, but it's very rare to have someone who can deal with a bunch of different issues and do it effectively. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, the more different groups you try to deal with, the less time you have to study each of the groups. And so you generally become worse the more you try to deal with. So I believe in sticking with a couple of different topics. So, with me, probably the only groups you'll ever hear me talking about are Muslims and atheists, because that's what I'm interested in. It's not that other things aren't important. It's just that, there are other people who can deal with those things. Like you don't need to be like a Rambo who takes on everybody. What about UAP? When are you going to start dealing with Mormons?
Once I begin attacking Christians, I can also, uh, just kidding. I don't know. Mormons, I kind of dealt with it very briefly. I had an ex-Mormon on when we talked about it, and I was critical of Mormonism, and I actually only started noticing how messed up Mormonism is when I took a course on learning about Mormonism, and then started learning about the history of Mormonism and the teachings of Joseph Smith, and I don't know, the whole moral aspects of it. It felt a little bit sickening, and similar to Islam, to Muhammad, and all that. But that said, I don't know, is Mormonism, aside from a spiritual level, which is something that would rather concern you as a Christian, a big issue to me in the world? I'm now, so I don't care. There are lots of worse things to deal with,
Yeah.
and I have my hands full with Islam.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that's kind of my view. It's okay if you have various groups, then Christians who are interested in apologetics can deal with those various groups. Yeah, my background is an atheist, so I'm interested in that sort of thing. And as far as my interest in Islam, it was mainly because my best friend was a Muslim in college. If he had been something else, I probably would be. I would probably be doing something else right now because I probably would have been studying something else. But since I got on that issue, yeah, I think that if I were to start dealing with other issues, then I mean, it's like I believe that I have enough material to deal with to last me the rest of my life, and so anytime I'm going to go do something else, it's like detracting from the
Yeah,
stuff I actually want to do.
precisely.
Messianic Apostate here said, Hakikachu recently accused Robert Spencer of pretending to be against the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. This is serious character assassination. I mean,
This guy is just
Hakikachu also says that, the Catholic Encyclopedia says Mary was 12. Doesn't. Says we have no idea. He also says that since inspiring philosophy is not in favor of uh, legal penalties on kids who have sex, therefore he's in favor of children having sex and so on. So I mean, every source this guy quotes, he like very frequently doesn't get it, doesn't understand it, or he's misrepresenting it. So yeah, as far as serious character assassination, I don't think you could take anything Daniel says as serious character assassination if you know him, because you don't take anything he says very tremendously seriously.
How do you deal with a person like that? He says Robert Spencer is one of those people who support the invasion of Iraq and all the violence against Muslims in the Middle East. He says no, I don't. I'm explicitly against it. I think it was a big mistake. And then the response is no, you're just pretending to be against it. Well, okay, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it reminds me of like the towards the end of the discussion they were having when Daniel's like, and Robert's a racist, and it's like, why do you even respond to that nonsense, right? Like, and my opponent's a racist. It's like, it's funny. It's funny because Daniel complains about the left, but then he adopts the same. Fellows just call someone a racist.
Yeah.
RM here says, but Muslims say there are 10 heaven bounds like Allah. Yeah, the point is, Abu Bakr is one of the people who are guaranteed paradise. And Abu Bakr still doubted that he was going to paradise, which means that he was doubting Muhammad's guarantee. Why? Because he believed in a God who can deceive him even through their prophets. In other words, Abu Bakr himself was once deceived by Allah through Muhammad. Allah gave Muhammad a dream saying, hey, this army that's coming at you is really small. You could take these guys. And then Muhammad's followers are all, yay, let's go get these guys. And they go out. And then it's this massive army. And, oh, Allah, you tricked us. And yeah, I tricked you. But it was to get you to go out and fight. And so this is a guy who believed that God can trick you into doing what he wants, even though he's deceiving you.
Mm-hmm.
Shio here said, if the Muslims had followed the example of Muhammad in Sahih Muslim, the kid would have never gotten sick. So yeah, we have powerful information on how to avoid getting sick. You eat your dates and so on. Mr. Archer here says, I found y'all through David Wood's video about his son's passing. That's an interesting way to start following. Like, seriously, all the stuff I posted over the years, that's right. Anyway, my wife and I were pregnant after 6 years of infertility and loss, due in 3 days now. And David Wood's thoughts on Abraham and Isaac were a wake-up call I didn't know I needed. Well, that's cool. Glad that helped.
Nice.
Yep, that was a pretty dope video if anyone hasn't seen it. And we got these super chats coming in. Tidy here says, I'm an ex-Muslim from Ivory Coast, and Muslims there really don't know about this Jewish thing. We don't learn about the Muslims versus Jews beef there. That's interesting, and that's what I'm wondering, like, because just different areas will emphasize different things, and I would guess, like, the closer you are to Israel, the more of an issue it's going to be.
Yeah,
but that is, I mean, at the end of the day, it is straight out of the Muslim sources about needing to fight the Jews if you want your virgins, if you want the judgment to come and so on.
Indeed.
And here we have Daniel is AP's multiverse variant. What?
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
They're exactly the same.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to this.
I loved my mother and I loved my community. And when I decided to follow Yeshua, my grandfather and my father said to me, you are no longer one of us. They made a funeral. They invited friends and family. They brought a coffin to the cemetery, and they said, our son is dead. To be declared dead with no family. I said to God, where are you? I heard this voice, and this voice told me, you know that the grave where your name is written, you know that grave is empty. And guess what? My grave is also empty.
Really, they did that whole symbolism of actually getting a coffin and saying our son is dead. That's
pretty
kind of
hardcore. Like I've heard of Muslim families saying you're dead to us, but they actually like enacted it and said, hey, we're having a funeral for you because we're counting you as dead to our family and so on.
That's pretty wild, pretty messed up.
That's pretty hardcore. I should do that with my kids at some point. Like if they really annoy me, be like, hey, let's go out. Hey guys, let's go out. I want to take you somewhere. I'm like, what? This is your gravestone here. That's hardcore, man.
Yeah, don't ever do that.
Yeah. I mean, what's cool is, I mean, some of these variations on, casting the person out or something like that. I mean, at the end of the day, it is better than just killing them, which is what Muhammad commanded.
Yeah. My father told me once he found out what I'm doing online, he said something like, as long as you are doing this, there is no way for us to accept you. And that's the last time I talked to him. That was many years ago. So I guess people express their disappointment quite differently.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. That is part of what we were just looking at that when we were looking at that about when we were looking at the Paul Williams video, and he was like, but Islam isn't shrinking as fast in the UK. It's not shrinking like other things are. It's like, yeah, well, if you do have penalties for apostates, and you do have, leaving aside issues like massive immigration and so on, if it is understood, hey, if you ever leave this religion, your family is going to cast you out, your community is going to cast you out, not talk to you anymore. That is quite a bit of pressure on you to, even if you don't believe it anymore, to keep your mouth shut about it. And that's why Asadullah Ali says he goes around, and wherever he goes, he meets all these people who are in the mosques, who are still part of it, some of them leading prayers and so on in the mosques, and they're confiding in him. We don't really believe this, man. So in other words, if you have these kind of pressures and penalties and so on, it encourages people to live double lives. Like, here's my life in front of my family and everyone, but here's the real me that you don't get to see.
Indeed.
Indeedly do.
I went to Egypt for the first time after many years, and I was in a pastoral conference. And one of the Sudanese pastors came to me. It's an elderly man, gray hair. He started to speak to me and he asked me, where did you come from? I told him my story. He started to cry. And then I asked him, why are you crying? And he said to me, do you remember me? My name is Zechariah.
What?
And
There's your Zechariah. That's why I said you
Wow.
got to keep watching.
Wow. Okay, that was a twist.
So in the story, they beat this kid. They said they left him between life and death, and left him there in the woods. And then they roll up out of there. Said they never saw him again. And then years later, so this is more recently, he's at a Christian conference in Egypt and runs into this guy.
I have to
Southern.
admit that just gave me goosebumps. Seriously.
Goosebumps.
But-
You see it? You see, AP has converted.
Ooh, goosebumps. That means I have converted.
I remembered him. The last time I saw him, it was in that dark night. I could hear suddenly the way that he was screaming, even though that was 25 years. Suddenly I started to see his broken arm and broken legs. I started to see the scars, which I caused him. I started to be full of shame. I was a bad person, yeah. I was terrible.
That's
So
rough.
Zechariah looked me straight into the eye again and he said to me, Yassir, because you hated me so much, I was always praying for you. He opened his Bible, and the minute he opened his Bible, I saw that my name was written in the first page. I hated him. He prayed for me. On that day, God confronted me.
You all right, AP?
Yes.
All right, we'll continue then. This is about the
He
end.
said to me, even before you start to think about me, I was thinking about you. To love those who hate you, you need someone whose name is Yeshua.
Yeah, so you need Jesus, not Richard Dawkins,
But Richard Dawkins is the true prophet.
not Sam Harris, not Christopher Hitchens. Hey, Wes here says, David, is it true that you got to drive around and watch The Passion of the Christ with Shabir Ali? Lol, much love for your ministry. Thanks. Yes, I did. That was, forget which year that was. That was...
What, really? I thought that was a joke.
No, early 2000s, 2002, 2003. Yeah, so Shabir was coming to Virginia to debate Mike Licona on whether Jesus rose from the dead. And The Passion had just come out. And I knew who Shabir was. No one knew who I was. I was just a college student back then. But I messaged Shabir and I was like, hey, the movie The Passion of the Christ just came out. It's a debate. Something might come up in the Q&A or something like that about, what you think about the movie. I said, so you might want to see it. If you don't have anyone to bring you, I said, I'll be happy to pick you up and bring you and so on. So they messaged me back. Yes, that would be awesome and stuff. And so, yeah, I took Shabir Ali before he had any clue who I was to The Passion of the Christ. And then years later, I had, I think, 9 debates. I think I've had 9 debates with Shabir Ali.
That's nice.
He actually mentions me in the debate. He's like, I think, because at some point he brings up The Passion of the Christ or something like this. And he said, and my new friend David took me to The Passion of the Christ and so on. So, yeah, that was way back in the day.
Wow.
A Muslim parent... Dang, a Muslim parent tombstone and coffin service is a great business idea. That would be funny if someone starts a business like, hey, are you worried about the avalanche of apostasy and want to dial up the pressure? Then here's how you can have a funeral service for your apostate kids to convert them back to Islam.
Do you want to disown your children? Here is the solution. What the-
And Jeff here says, AP, praying for the restoration of your relationship with your father, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, like how close, like how much does that bother you? Like if you know, for someone who, there could be a scale. Like if you're really close with your family, it can be devastating to not, you know, have a relationship with your family anymore. Or there are people who completely despise their families and don't want to see them anymore, and so on.
I mean, I had a very complicated relationship with my dad. He wasn't a very close, a very caring, very attentive father. He was rather rough, and I learned to always be afraid of him, which was more of a problem to my brother because he was just he was a messed up guy, and I was more the good kid. That's what they thought of me, which is very which is actually not a great thing because you keep getting all of these expectations put on you, like you're supposed to be the good one, you can't do anything wrong, and your brother is the bad one. But I never really got this whole close relationship from my father until especially before I became like a religious Muslim. There was a phase where I was a communist for several years, and that was like completely unacceptable in our family, and my father basically hated it, and he yelled at me about that like every day. But once I became very religious, he started being very good with me, started loving me and taking me everywhere and being so proud of me. You could see it in his face. So that was a very nice thing. Then after he learns that I leave Islam, he still kind of tries to maintain that thing. And then he learns that I'm explicitly against Islam. Then he never wants to do anything with me. I never want to have anything to do with me again. And that's kind of rough. And I don't know. There were times where I felt really, really, really depressed about this and thought, why did I even leave? Why did I tell anybody that I left? Why would I do this to myself? But I feel like, I don't know, I got over it. I got used to it. Like, what are you going to do? That's life, right?
That's life. That's
C'est la
what
vie.
all the people say.
C'est la vie.
Frank
C'est la
Sinatra,
vie.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sheikh Yogi Bear says, both this Yassir guy and AP clearly only left Islam because they wanted to drink alcohol. Alhamdulillah, the Ummah remains pure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's it. That's all I ever see AP doing is chugging, loves vodka. He's guzzling bottles of vodka.
What's funny is I haven't had a drink in years.
Hey!
Yeah.
This proves that Islam is true. AP doesn't drink. Steve C says, I would consider Christianity, but any God who would torture anyone for eternity is a deal breaker. So in your face.
You paid $5 to this channel. See?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That will buy your way out of torment.
Inshallah.
Everyone give me $5. It will take some of the people are messed up who will do that stuff. Hey, to be fair, Steve C, just keep in mind there are some different perspectives on this. So the main perspectives that you'll see, so you have the literal interpretation of passages on hell, and so that's like when it says fire, that means literal fire. When you see, he says the worm never dies, that means an actual, literal worm is going to be there. Then you have the metaphorical view, which is that these things, it doesn't have to be literal fire or literal worm or something like that. These are metaphors for bad things, bad states of affairs. You don't want to be there. You have once you start going to like Christian philosophers and so on, all of a sudden an annihilationist view becomes more popular, whereas you'll find lots of Christian philosophers who hold to an annihilationist view. And if you're thinking, look at all these passages that refute that, they do have passages like when Jesus says, do not fear those who can kill the body, but after that can do no more. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. And so they'll point to that and say, there he's talking about destroying the soul and the body, and so annihilation and so on. So anyway, but then you have all these other passages you have to interpret in light of that interpretation. You even have people who are universalists, but not in like a sort of village universalism. Like a village universalism would be like, but God's loving, therefore he's just going to let us all into heaven. It's more like going to passages in the Bible which says God wants everyone to be saved, and then saying, look, if God wants everyone to be saved, then everyone's going to be saved. And doesn't mean everyone gets a free pass on everything they've done, but they actually believe that you are going on to some other plane of reality where you are going to accept God. But anyway, the dominant positions are the literal view or the metaphorical view. But if you're thinking about it, you might want to check out some people's thoughts on that, because people do have some defenses of these different perspectives. Not saying they're right, but if that's something you're interested in checking out, then you might want to check it out.
I don't want to meddle with Christian thinking here, but
good, because I'll crush you.
I know what I know is so I only learned about the presence of different interpretations of hell, like that is should not be taken literally, that there is a universal reconciliation possible, or that there is a annihilation is possible. I know that these ideas are not necessarily new; they date back to early church fathers, even some of them. I personally looked into that, and I just thought I don't see how on a thorough reading of the text you could conclude that there is no literal eternal punishment. Is always what I thought. I mean, if I could kind of fit into it the idea that is not existent within the religion, then I could understand it. I could have a little bit more understanding for it, but I just don't feel like, I don't know. I'm being very incoherent right now, I know.
Yeah, plus you're like, I don't feel this, I don't feel that. We're not interested in your feelings, AP.
I know. No, I'm just saying, based on what I read, it looks to me implausible that there is no literal eternal punishment. That's all I'm saying.
The idea behind it, again, I'm not defending any of these positions. You know what would be interesting? Like, we actually get some people who defend some of these other positions, and like have someone like defend. Okay, what is your best case for the literal view, and what are your objections to alternatives to that? What is your best case, for the metaphorical view, and what's your response to other positions? What's your defense of the annihilationist view, or a philosophical universalism or something like that? But again, the thing is, they all have passages that they go to, and they say, hey, look, this passage really sounds like it supports my view. And the question is, what do you do with all these other passages? So what you would say is, like, most of the passages, you have passages that do sound like annihilationism. You do have some that do sound like, at least like, God wants universalism if he's not actually getting it. And so, but yes, you do have passages that they go to, but it's kind of weird going to like one or two and saying this supports this, where you have like, 20 that sound like something else. But their defense is that, like, even in a passage where Jesus is talking about Lazarus, not the Lazarus that's raised, but the Lazarus that's an example of a rich man going to hell. And it's, there's like these, it's like they're talking to each other, people, and they can see each other and so on, right? Like, people in heaven and people in hell are like communicating and so on. And he's calling out from down there, hey, man, it really sucks down here. Hey, can you send someone up there to go and warn my family and stuff? Like, there's this, like, most Christians do not take that as something that's actually happening. That's a story to teach some sort of lesson. So the claim is that lots of things that Jesus is saying about, hell and stuff are like that. Not saying that's correct view, but the claim is that the passages that are talking about hell and are generally found in the teachings of Jesus and in Revelations. And those happen to be two places where lots of metaphorical language and so on, and lots of examples are used. So anyway, I don't know, but it's not something I've ever really studied. I've just seen other people over time defending different claims and so on. But it might be something to check out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
We will do that. We will get someone on here, or at the very least, find someone who studies this a lot and can steel man the case for each one and what the case is and so on.
Inshallah.
And then, we did have this. When David is in charge, super chats are read on the fly. With AP, you wait 90 minutes and you're lucky if he even remembers to check. God bless David. What's funny is this.
I read them all the time.
What's funny is this is totally wrong. I've been doing it now, and
I know.
sometimes I do it. Sometimes I go the entire thing, and I don't read any. I don't check any of the super chats. Depends on what's going on. I knew that we had a short video we're going through, and then another clip we're going through, and so was not in a terrible rush to get through the content and so on. So yeah, I've been going through these on the fly. But we have another clip, ladies and gentlemen. We have a clip of a Muslim calling out. What's his name? Yassir Eric for being a liar. Now, this is a much longer video. The most interesting point on what he was saying was this story of Zechariah. So I cut the clip of.
Wait, is this done? Is the clip done?
Yeah, that was it. It was an 8-minute video. We already been through it.
Okay.
He's got much longer videos and stuff where he goes through full story and stuff like that. But yeah, that was the 8-minute or so clip on One for Israel.
I see.
And so, but he has been criticized, and there is a long video of a Muslim calling him out and going through the details. And I do I'll pay attention when someone's saying, hey, this guy's making stuff up, just because we've talked about this before, that some people do make stuff up, right? And so the example we talked about before, I thought of another big one. But we talked before about Ergen Caner, who, it's not that Ergen Caner didn't, convert to Islam from Christianity. He just started embellishing the details over time and then made himself sound more and more radical and so on. And he was part of this youth jihad movement and came here to convert people and radicalize them and so on. And it turns out that most of that stuff was just completely made up.
Yeah.
And then another one I thought of earlier today when I was like, oh, let's check out this clip of this guy who's criticizing him, was I was locked up and we were passing around this tape. Focus on the Family put it out, but it was by a guy, some of you may have heard of him, Tom Papania, who was in the mafia, but he was in the Gambino family, but he was like a sort of a low-level enforcer. So he's not someone important. He's like a low-level, he's one of the low-level guys. But as he went around telling his story, he ended up in his story becoming the third highest in the Gambino family. And he's like, calling all the shots and so on. And eventually people who study the mafia start going, wait, who is this? Who is this? I mean, if you were the third highest in the Gambino family, we would have heard of you. So they do some investigating. Turns out he was in the mafia, did convert to Christianity, embellished his story a ton to make it much more dramatic. And so, guys, keep in mind, there is a kind of pressure to do this, right? Like there are benefits for you, like right now online, because you can get so many followers. If you come out with some dramatic story about how you, converted to Islam, let's say, there's a huge pressure to say, oh man, I after studying all this stuff, I converted to Islam because I had these problems with the Trinity. And then I saw that Muhammad was the greatest man ever and stuff. And then I found out this and I found out that. And we see these, and we see the desire to embellish stories. Like take Yusha Evans, who's a convert to Islam. Yusuf Estes, convert to Islam. You listen to their stories where they portray themselves as, ministers and so on. They know how that's being interpreted. When they say, I was a Christian minister, they know they're interpreted. Your people are interpreting that as like pastor or something like that. These guys didn't have any sort of positions anywhere in church, but they can technically defend it because you can say, minister just means a servant. So, I was a Christian servant. And it's like, wait, that's not what people interpret Christian minister to mean, right? So that. So they're deliberately trying to embellish their story. And then with Yusha Evans, I went through his testimony and it did not fit well together. So that can happen, and we're aware of it when we see someone else doing it. But that doesn't mean that when someone from your own position does it, that it's okay and you should just let it slide. And so we're going to look at a clip from a Muslim calling out Yassir for specifically on this issue of Zechariah, calling into question whether this is authentic or made up. So you ready to check this out? Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. I got a couple more super chats here. Wait, hey, there's a bunch of super chats up here. What is going this on? Let me see. So Gene Rouse, mental hacker, the joke. Oh, over your head? Oh.
Yeah.
John Rouse, mental hacker. Solitary Emmy. By the way, sir, I think we have to add that not all hell will be the same. Different levels of punishment, just like different levels of reward in heaven, right? Yeah, there's no question. Jesus talks about some people getting a worse judgment than others based on what they know and so on.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I didn't make a super chat for this, but I have a question.
Well, then I'm not gonna answer it.
Fine.
No, go ahead.
So there is this thing that I noticed, especially when I came to America. I noticed that in America, Christians are very sensitive when it comes to using certain words that they consider cuss words. Like, for example, you say in the context of talking about the religion,
you just want to curse, don't you?
No, in the context when you talk about the religion, the scripture, and the doctrines, you talk about hell, for example. But if you say hell in like when it's I don't know, when it's
like what the hell?
Yeah, that is considered offensive, and you are not supposed to say it.
Yeah,
and
that is weird. Like, why is that? Why is that a curse word? Like,
yeah, and the issue is, I only notice this among American Christians, and mainly among Protestants. Like when you talk to other Christians from different parts of the world, or from, I don't know, to some of the Catholics, or even the the Anglicans and all of that, you will see that they care much less about using certain words like that, and they are. Why is that?
Yeah, so AP is complaining here that more Christians don't use curse words.
No, I'm just trying to understand it, because I'm really trying to understand that.
Yeah, that is a question. Like, why is that? Like, we understand why the F word or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't have to be. We could, society could change to where it's not considered a curse word or something like that. But yeah, why like hell or something like that? Let's see.
So you're not going to answer my question. So you're just going to.
No, I don't know. I don't know why American Christians think hell is a curse word in certain contexts. Well, yes, this brings me back to my days studying linguistics at Oxford when I raised this problem to Professor Uppingforth, and he said, Bobby says, David, when you played those clips of Paul Williams' amazing reasons for why he converted to Islam, it strengthened my iman. Alhamdulillah, you see. Hey, Bobby, you got to add, I was a Muslim before I watched that video, and I'm still a Muslim afterwards. Or you could take it a step further and
now a bunch of Christians in the chat are saying, "What the hell, AP?"
I was an atheist before I watched the Paul Williams clip. Oh, I'm a Muslim, alhamdulillah. The Informed Infidel says, "This is for AP. Can you please give it to him?" No, I will not. And RM says, one for Israel. Are you guys Zionists? By the way, what do you guys think about the possible Saudi-Israeli normalization? Muslims say it's a sign of Qiyamah. Uh-oh. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about what's going on. Something going on between Saudi Arabia and Israel?
Yeah, there are apparently Saudi Arabia and Israel are in talks of normalizing their relationships. And what that means is, during the whole, the wars between Israel and the Palestinian Arabs and the other Arab states, the Arab League, the Arabs came together and basically agreed, among Arabs, we are making a rule: nobody will recognize, nobody will mention, nobody will talk to, nobody will have any relationships with Israel. So, and now, recently, the United Arab Emirates broke that. Several other countries broke that. Egypt was breaking that back in the day. And now Saudi Arabia, which is a huge deal, is apparently in talks with Israel to break it and to pick up actual international diplomatic relationships. And that may be a very big deal. Lots of Muslims around the world are getting quite worked up and worried about that. But I mean, to me, what it is, I recently talked about how in Saudi Arabia they had concerts where they invited singers and had these very interesting presentations. Saudi Arabia realizes that depending on oil is going to be a problem for them in the long run. So they're trying to diversify and branch out and change the country, and they're slowly moving away from all their conservative Islamist.
Yeah, I wonder what Daniel Hakikachu thinks of that, of liberalism dominating, and even in Saudi Arabia.
He blasts Saudi Arabia because of that.
Pretty soon we'll be able to take a tour of the Kaaba.
Yes,
that'll be fun. We'll be there. Saudi Arabia, just invite us. Oh, it's interesting. Tyson Fury has a fight coming up next month, but then I think his fight with Usyk, the Ukrainian, for the unification, because they each have some of the heavyweight championships. But he's about to fight, I think, later this month, and then several months later fight Usyk. But they're both those fights are supposed to be in Saudi Arabia, and that's interesting because Tyson Fury, after every fight, says, whatever the question they ask, he says, "First of all, I want to give all honor and glory to me Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." And I think it's going to be awesome seeing that in Saudi Arabia. Or does Tyson Fury not say it because they put it like in a contract or something? I don't know, but I want to see that stuff. That's going to be interesting. And then we're going to get to this video.
Is that guy's name Usyk? Is that what you say?
Usyk.
You're sick. Okay.
He's significantly smaller than Tyson Fury, but the guy's got like resting crazy eyes. He's hilarious. So I don't believe the Sudanese man, because in sub-Saharan Africa, most people are too busy hating the other tribes in their country. Nobody cares about Jewish people, but I don't know about Sudan. That may be true. We're going to look at some reasons that have been given for calling elements of the story into question. But keep in mind, tons of Arabs moved to Sudan. Like, I know an Arab Christian pastor who is from Sudan. Tons of Arabs moved to Sudan. So
why would they do that?
I don't actually know, but they did.
What a place to move to.
But yeah, so that could have something to do with people's view of Jews in Sudan. But I have to say, in other versions of his story, he emphasizes Christians. He emphasizes hating the Christians of South Sudan. So because this is this is a video for one for Israel, he might have emphasized, I hated the Jews too.
That makes sense.
And let's see, David, I think you might like the book From the Godfather to God the Father by Michael Francis, former captain in the Colombo crime family, his personal story of coming to Christ. Yeah, I've seen that guy, and I've seen that guy in videos. Matter of fact, I saw him in a video. I think it was on PBD podcast where he was talking to Sammy the Bull, and it looked like they were about to fight, and they cut the camera. They're basically accusing each other of not being good mafia guys. All right, let's check out some of this video.
Let's go straight to the core event, the story of Zechariah. That's the one where in high school, he and his gang beat up Zechariah and left him for dead in the forest, only for the two of them to miraculously reunite later in life. Time for detective skills test number 2.
So just to be clear, this is from a much longer video where he goes through the details and calls them into question. And the reason for paying attention to something like this is there are occasionally people who fabricate elements of their story. I mean, someone can just completely fabricate a story, but more frequently people will start embellishing details to make it more dramatic and so on. So that does happen. That can happen with people from any group. And if it happens, then you need to be aware of it.
Can't listen to one video without David pausing it immediately to give a whole lecture.
Well, I'm not going to play the entire video because then, I don't know, that might be a copyright or something like that. But anyway, this is a much longer video. I took out the clip on this because that's what he focuses on in the video we just watched.
I met him 25 years later. And he was praying 25 years for me. Even though that was 25 years. And on that moment,
Yeah, we get it.
in
25
Cairo,
years.
in the year of 2007,
2000.
and one of the Sudanese pastors came to me. It's an elderly man, gray hair.
So he's putting together basically a timeline, which that is one way to, to when someone, matter of fact, that's what I did with the Yusha Evans testimony and so on. He's saying all these things happen, and he'd say 3 months later and a year there and stuff. One of the things I did was put together a little timeline. I was like, wait, you did all this stuff happen in this little 3-month period according to your timeline and so on. And so on. So he's putting it together saying, okay, he said in 2007, there was this Cairo conference that he's at, and had been 25 years late, had been 25 years earlier that they had attacked this guy Zechariah and stuff. So he's putting together a little timeline here.
Right? So the incident happened in high school, where they must have been between 12 and 17 years old. They then reunited 25 years later. He mentions this 3 times. Which means Zechariah, his classmate who sat next to him, must have been between 37 and 42 years old when they reunited. Going the other way around, in a 2019 response to his Christian critic, Yassir says he's almost 50 years old, so at most he's 49 in 2019. He says he met Zechariah in Cairo in 2007, which means 12 years before 2019. That would make him, at most, 37 years old at the time. 37-year-olds are not elderly, gray-haired men.
So the criticism
is that whom he was describing as elderly, gray-haired man?
Yeah, he said he had gray hair.
Okay.
So yeah, that's most people get gray hair later than that. I have to say, I've seen people getting gray in their 20s, and I've seen people going fully gray in their 30s. So I don't think this is the biggest problem here, but there are some things to consider.
But could it be that he uses the word elderly? Because I mean, elderly, you wouldn't call a regular 30 or 40-year-old elderly, right? Mm-hmm. Could it be that he's not using that word correctly because it's not his first language or something?
That's another possibility. And so those are things too. It's weird because you're thinking, okay, well, he's telling the story. He's saying it's 25 years later. If he's just making this up, why would he make something up about this guy being elderly or something like that? So yes, it is possibly like a language thing that he just means like, grown up, or, hey, you're starting to look old because you have gray hair or something like that. But anyway, so I wouldn't consider this a terribly strong point. You can have people that is a weird thing. We wouldn't talk like that, saying someone is elderly if he's in his mid or late 30s or something like that. Well, I guess, I mean, wait, if he's saying he was in high school and then 25 years after high school, so what would be the maximum, 17 or 18 or something like that? So yeah, in theory, it could be early 40s or something like that. But then there's this timeline with, going from 2007 earlier or whatever. Anyway, I don't know.
To look at it another way, this is Yassir in 2021. Imagine what he looked like 14 years earlier in 2007.
Yeah, probably looked pretty.
I don't think anyone would describe him or Zechariah as elderly back then. I went through a lot of comments on the video.
If someone like that had gray hair, then I don't know, maybe, but we'll see.
Not all 4,000 of them, but I was surprised to only find one person who picked up on this.
Nope, I picked up on it too. As soon as I heard the testimony, I was like, wait, you're describing this guy, wait, he would be, what, maybe 41, 42? You're calling him elderly?
So congratulations to Mr. Techno Max.
And to David Wood, because again, I'm not saying, I can think of a bunch of ways to reconcile this and so on, but those things sort of can build up. And so the question is, are they going to build up to where we say, we don't trust the story of Zechariah? But no, this would not be enough to make me doubt a story, saying that someone in his late 30s or early 40s was gray and possibly describing as elderly.
Point number 2. Who covered Zechariah's mouth?
Here's another one I think is weak. We'll see why.
Screamed and begging for help. I put my hand in his mouth so that no noise will come out of him. similar when you are slaughtering a sheep, you know, it's just shivering, and the others were beating him. One of the guys was putting his hand in his mouth, you know, and I was on the top of him and the other one, so we hit him so bad.
That's how is that a big deal? I mean,
Point number 3.
Yeah, I don't think that one's a big deal. I mean, that would be so. So notice he's got this story about them trying to keep this guy quiet while they beat the crap out of him and try to beat him to death. And in one where he's talking one time, he says, one of my friends, you know, held his mouth, and then in the one for Israel, he says, you know, I stuck my hand in his mouth to keep him quiet. And of course, the assumption there would be you couldn't be taking turns doing stuff while beating the crap out of someone, right? That would be like me. I could tell one story about a guy kicking me in the head while his buddies hold me on the ground, and then point out that another guy was kicking me in the head while these guys held me on the ground, and then point out that another guy was kicking me in the head. Guys, these guys were holding me on the ground, literally took turns kicking me in the head, right? So, but notice if I didn't say they were taking turns and I just said, yeah, this guy Justin was kicking me in the head because I just beat the crap out of him. His buddies held me on the ground. He's kicking me in the head. And then, you know, I can say, this other guy, David such and such, he was kicking me in the head. And if I didn't point out that these guys are actually taking turns doing stuff, he says it was this guy. But then he says it was this other guy kicking him in the head. And then he's telling the story over here and he says this other guy was kicking him in the head. So yeah, that's why I said this one's kind of.
This is a very weak approach. It's like I thought he was going to dig into stuff that is actually relevant to the conversion or things or something like that. But I mean, this could be a false memory, which is very common. It could be him just being vague about the event. How is this strong?
Jeff Derbla here on the elderly thing saying, or elderly in stature, like an elder of a church. Oh, so saying like elderly possible. Yeah, we don't talk like that, but maybe they do. I mean, notice it's like for Mormons, they'll show up and it'll be like a 17-year-old and he's got Elder Smith on his chest. And you're like, you're not an elder. So that can also be position. I don't know if that's what he meant though, because he did connect.
Why do you call yourself elder? You're not an elder.
Okay. And Rebecca was 3 years old when Isaac's mother died. I don't know what that was in reference to, but all right, here we go.
Zechariah's permanent blinding.
And I saw the injuries in his face. The injuries in his face where actually I damaged him. I saw his eye, which he no longer see, because we injured him.
So out of the 4 videos in which he describes Zechariah's story in detail, this is the only one where he mentions anything about him being permanently blinded in one eye, which is strange considering his dramatic description of Zechariah's broken arms and legs 25 years later.
All right.
Being permanently blinded is obviously a much bigger deal than just a broken arm which heals a few months later. It's inconceivable that he could have forgotten this detail in the other videos.
This is so dumb. He didn't mention it, therefore it must be made up because he only mentioned it once. What?
Yeah, that's pretty. Especially, I mean, if you're thinking like some of these videos, like the one for Israel video, is 8 minutes. So you just got to pick 8 minutes. Like, what are the 8 minutes that we want in this video? Yeah. So I'm not.
This is terrible.
Yeah, he's talking about so he could still tell like how his body was kind of disfigured from the injuries and so on. But he didn't mention the eye, but he mentioned it elsewhere. So notice again, it could be something where later on he's embellishing a story or something like that. But
possible.
Doesn't it's not enough for me to accuse someone of being a liar or something like that.
Yeah.
Which year did the beating occur? 25 years before 2007 would put us in 1982, when Yassir would have been around 12 years old. This print screen from one of the clips, however, tells us that it happened in 1987, when he would have been around 16 or 17. The years don't match up. Now for the military-issued firearms.
That's it.
Well,
That's it. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Ah,
Now,
this is really.
notice things like that. People can get details wrong. So notice you have, okay, if someone says something that doesn't line up or that contradicts something else, you have multiple possibilities. One is someone's embellishing something. And normally if someone's embellishing something, it's like there's a reason for it. So I understand the idea of saying, and he was still blind, or he's still blind in an eye or something like that. That is a detail you could add to embellish a story. Getting the year wrong or something like that doesn't sound too impressive. I'm pointing this out because one, we want to be careful in what videos we share and so on, to make sure we're not sharing material from people who might make something up. On the other hand, if you take someone who's shared his story over and over and over again, you can get things like this, right? You could get things like, matter of fact, with Nabil, there was a thing where a couple of Christians were calling him out for fabricating his story. And the basis was that in one version of his testimony, one video, he was saying that when he had his second dream, where he dreams about me and I'm at this gathering and so on, and he's standing there looking through this narrow door. He says he's looking through this narrow door, and he sees me sitting at a table and so on. And that's when he says, David, I thought we were gonna have lunch together. And I said, you never responded. But then in one video he says, and so I look through the door and I see David standing there. I say, Nabil says standing. David was standing. In this other video, he says David was sitting. And so see, he's making this story up. Now, what's the problem? Well, problem is I was there, not there actually in the dream, but I was there the next day when he called me and said, hey, do Christians believe that God can speak to people in dreams and so on? So we talk about this, and he tells me the story. I was like, dude, you just dreamt straight out of the Gospel of Luke. There's a parable in the Gospel of Luke. And so on. So I was there. I know he's not making that up later on. And I asked him about it. I was like, hey, they're calling you out for fabricating your story because you said I was standing there versus I was sitting there. And he goes, oh, I don't know. I just misspoke and so on. But notice, if you're trying to attack someone, you would not let him slide on that. My point is, pretty much everyone does that. If you're, telling a story about things that happened years earlier and so on. So you got to be careful about picking out the details and so on, even on timeline. Like I could say, hey, in 1985, blah, blah, blah happened. Well, what if you did your investigating and find out it was 1983 or something like that?
I want to. I learned this in psychology actually, and I was studying.
You should study psychology.
Where there's there was a research about false memories.
See, AP embellishing his credential. I studied psychology. Go ahead.
And the research was saying, I don't remember the exact statistics, the exact number, but it is very well known and established now in the fields of psychology that false memory is a thing, and that when it comes to significant events, like one example is asking people where they were when they found out about 9/11, and studies show that that a lot of people, I think, I want to say even most people, remember it all wrong, like where they were when it happened.
Not me. I know exactly where I was.
And how they were and how they found out. So it could even be that your memory is wrong here. Mm-hmm. Like the research shows that that a lot of people get significant events wrong because they feel so strongly about them that they begin associating different things with those events, and then start making things up in their head and getting stuff all wrong. But this is a scientifically established fact that false memories are a thing. So you can't just
and you have similar things. That's why eyewitness testimony is problematic, because people do have this thing where they've been a victim of some crime and they walk into court, or they eventually see a picture of the person or something like that, and they assume it's an assumption that cops got the right guy. And then so once they see the person, that person will then be inserted into their memories, where it was a kind of a vague memory of what the person looks like. Then when they see the person, then all of a sudden, no, I remember that guy. I remember that guy. That was him. So you have those kinds of issues. And then so with me, like I've shared my story. When you're going through things, you're not thinking, oh, I need to make sure I remember all these details and get these details in the right order and so on for later on, because you're just going through it. You're not thinking, oh yeah, 15 years from now, I'm going to be sharing this story. But like with me, like in my testimony, I'll talk about a kind of design argument I was thinking about and a kind of moral argument I was thinking about, and then the resurrection that I was thinking about. When I'm talking about that, I remember thinking about all these things and reading about various things and so on. I don't remember the order of some things. Like I don't remember if I was thinking about the moral argument before the design argument, or which order. But when I'm saying it, I'll just say it. No, like then I studied this and so on, depending on what I'm trying to emphasize. But if you held me down to it, it's like no, some of the order of things I don't actually remember it. So the point is, you could in theory like find me in different if I'm talking and I'm emphasizing different things, you could probably do the exact same thing to me and find, oh, look, right, well, here he says this happened, then this happened, but over here he says this happened, then that happened. Anyway, point is pretty common for people who are talking about things that happen 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago to like this. The issue was it this year or that year? Well, I don't know. Suppose it's that year or not that year. How much you're gonna say, therefore he's making this up?
But we already know that David Wood is a liar because he's an Islamophobe.
He's Islamophobe. Can't trust him. Can't trust him.
And we had our guns because we had a military training that time. And
This, again, is the only video out of the 4 where he mentions anything about firearms. When you're describing an attempted murder scene, the presence of firearms is sort of an important detail. It raises other questions as well. If these 5 guys in his gang were determined to kill Zechariah that night, how could they fail to do so when they had guns? Also, if the event occurred in 1982, then it's hard to imagine 12-year-olds being allowed access to military firearms. To put things in context, this is a picture of Yassir when he was 11 years old. Point 6.
So the point there is in one version, so not in the One for Israel version, he says that they had guns.
Mm-hmm.
And he's calling them out here. So the claim here, there were 2 claims. One, why wouldn't they just shoot him then? Where that doesn't seem like a problem to me, because if they're trying to keep quiet and they're covering his mouth, they're obviously trying to keep this quiet. So that doesn't... that makes sense that you wouldn't shoot the guy if you're trying to keep quiet.
I'm trying to be as skeptical and cynical as possible here, but I mean, even here, I just don't really think it's a big problem.
Yeah, and then the other claim is, well, these young guys wouldn't have had these weapons and so on. It's like, how do you? I mean, I don't know. I've seen various pictures of kids with weapons in Africa, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Did he brag about the murders, or did he try to cover it up? These are details from Yassir's book. As I can't speak German, I'll be relying on a critique made by another German.
If only we had someone who could speak German with us.
Oh, whoa.
Christian.
Okay, yeah.
That video is available on YouTube along with a full PDF transcript. For your reference, here is the relevant section. So on the one hand, Yassir in one clip says that he told his parents and people at school, and they were proud of him. On the other hand, in his book, he says he wanted to cover things up. Nobody at school asked about Zechariah, but some people suspected his gang. This German Christian sent an email to Yassir and spent 3.5 hours talking with him on the phone, trying to get some answers. He mentions that he doesn't want to expose Yassir, but he did say that his response was simply unbelievable and that it raised even more questions. Now for the 7th and final point.
So here's another situation where, okay, so in one version of his story, he says that he bragged about it. Another version of his story says he covered it up and so on. And so, yeah, he could be changing his story as going on, so he could be making things up. That's a possibility. Another possibility is that he did both at different times. Don't know. Let's see.
Murder as jihad.
Murder.
This is a picture of a book of hadith, or sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, called Sahih Bukhari. It's very famous, and it's unanimously agreed amongst Sunnis that this is the most reliable hadith book in existence.
Really? Never heard of that
So
book.
what does it say about killing innocent non-Muslims living in Muslim lands?
Okay, this is bad.
The Prophet said, "Whoever killed a person having a treaty with the Muslims shall not smell the smell of paradise, though its smell is perceived from a distance of 40 years."
Therefore, no Muslim would ever
You
kill a
see,
non-Muslim.
therefore, him saying that this was, he was waging jihad by doing this is simply absurd.
Now let's review the points regarding the story of Zechariah.
So he's saying that makes no sense for him to be waging jihad.
Yeah, like it never happens. Yeah.
For all of the above reasons, including the fact that we've never heard from or even seen a picture of the half-blinded Zechariah, I feel comfortable classifying this story as false beyond any reasonable doubt. Zechariah, to all appearances, is simply a product of pure fiction.
Wow.
Yeah, so
This
yeah,
is interesting judgment here.
yeah, I would say there are some areas there for that you could obviously doubt and so on. Nothing there that I would say, okay, you're obviously lying. Especially that last point about Muhammad said, if you have a treaty with someone and who's a Christian living in a Muslim country, then anyone who violates that and kills him is in all kinds of trouble. That's talking about like a dhimmi, someone who
Yeah.
is under dhimmi status and is under your protection in exchange for giving money. Then you don't kill that person. That does not mean you don't kill some guy or something like that, or that Muslims cannot view themselves as doing something great for Allah if they go kill some guy. Yeah, I wouldn't regard any of that as decisive evidence that he's making things up.
Yeah, same.
But again, you do want to pay attention to details and see if people are changing their story or outright fabricating the story. Because notice, I mean, you can always be someone who converts from Islam to Christianity, and then you tweak your story because it makes it more dramatic, and then you tweak it again, and you tweak it again, and 15 years later, you've got this story that's mainly embellishment and so on. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of the story?
I wonder if this guy approaches Muhammad with the same skepticism that he that he applies here.
Yeah, or Muslim testimonies. Right?
Yeah.
Meek Greek here says, AP, I hope soon you will accept Christ. Shalom, brother.
Shalom.
You see, AP just said shalom in response to this. David Wood, completely off topic, but what is the group of blue books behind you? Oh, those blue books, those are the works of Immanuel Kant. The Cambridge editions of the works of Immanuel Kant. So that's from, I don't even know why they're back there, because, I took a couple classes on Immanuel Kant in graduate school. Never paid much attention to it afterwards. So, yeah.
I can't imagine that you would find it interesting.
Yeah. I made up a joke once where I worked them both in there. I can't remember what it was, but it started out and you said, hey, you need to do something. You said, I can't. And the guy said, if you're Emmanuel, and I don't know. So I worked if you're Emmanuel in there. And let's see. And we have, of course, John the Presbyter. Peace be upon him. The Presbyter. Greetings from Germany. Ja, Deutschland. All right, everyone. That's pretty much all we wanted to cover. We wanted to go through this this story. Mainly, I'm interested in the differences between the stories of people who convert to Islam and the stories of people who become Christians. The stories of Muslims that I see converting to Christianity over and over again involve dreams, like they had some sort of dream that told them to do something, or witnessing some sort of healing or something like that. I've seen that over and over again. so those are interesting. And then the stories of converting from Christianity to Islam are usually I didn't understand the Trinity, or I didn't know why I believe this or that. And then, I had a Muslim
I
friend, and
studied all the religions in the world.
yeah, and then when you see the embellishment there, it's becomes, yes, and I tried to destroy Islam because I was an Islamophobe, and then as I tried to destroy it, I saw, no, what about the proof of the Quran, and so on, and so notice, I mean, it's a similar thing where you see the story and you start seeing things, and hey, is this something that was embellished, or is this authentic? Because I mean, keep in mind, there are people who doubt Christianity for all kinds of reasons and then think that Islam has the solution and so on. And so they convert, and so they can tell their story and be completely honest about it. And there are other people who know, because notice it's a kind of competition for attention. If you're in this era where everyone's competing for attention, whether you're Christian, Muslim, atheist, or whatever, if you're in this era where we're competing for attention, there is an incentive for dialing up your story so that you have an advantage over other stories. So guys, don't do that. Don't do that. Tell the truth. And you don't need to add any sort of special features to your story if they didn't actually happen. And what do we have here? One last super chat here. Yassir speaking German explains the elderly mistake. Oh, interesting. Many Germans, even students, use it for älteren, or older. It's like become and bekommen.
Yeah.
What, AP put a stamp of approval on there. And that's the reason you want to be careful about saying, oh, look, he said elder here, but this guy was only, late 30s or early 40s. So this doesn't make any sense, or something like that. Notice, I mean, the guy could have just looked old and could have had gray hair earlier than most people, or something like that. That happened. I've known people who had, gray hair in their 20s, and I've seen full heads of gray hair in their 30s. But yeah, so you got to be careful. And then there are additional factors like this, which is kind of why you want to be careful, because there can always be, especially if you're talking about someone from Sudan who then gets, goes to a German family, becomes a German preacher, and he's speaking in English. There are all kinds of things that you could be aware, that you might not be aware of when you're assessing whether something is true or not. All right, AP. Well, that's all I wanted to get through. Any final thoughts? What are you thinking?
I would say that this guy who is analyzing the story has some very interesting things to focus on. He should focus more on conversion stories and maybe on Muhammad's story. But the point about the German, that's very, very correct. In German, you would describe somebody who is older, and a man who is older is an älterer Mann, which is like elderly. You could get that
du
wrong.
hast recht. Du hast recht.
As a second language. But other than that, I just want to say what my friend Sajid Lippam always says, which is, stay away from Islam. Yeah.
And so, yeah, my view is, let's see, one for Israel. Yeah, I mean, think about this. If our friend here, if our Muslim friend is saying, hey, look at this, this kind of, I don't get this on the timeline or something like this, therefore fabricated. My goodness, apply that reasoning to the hadith.
Yeah.
You will conclude that it is one incoherent mess and can't trust any of it. But this guy's quoting the hadith, right? This guy's quoting the hadith to us as authoritative. Guys, if you think you can watch Christian testimony and say, hey, this doesn't make sense, my goodness, read the hadith. You go, I mean, on major issues, you get completely contradictory results. So apply some of that same reasoning, my friend. All right, so we're all done. And now we've got our outro.
Ain't gonna follow no child molester, sex offender, prophet pretender. Ain't gonna follow no child molester.
Islam's not for me.
What?
Islam's not for me.
It's not what?
Islam's
Not for me.
Catch you next time.